Come on, what's with this son screwdriver? It's not even doing good against wood. Felt a lot of good this son screwdriver is. Oh my god, sorry about this, guys. I didn't see you there. I was just fixing up a little problem with my little friend, the wall. And some creaks were coming through the wall, and then I had some trouble with some wood lights. I just had to fix that up. Strangely enough, there is no wood setting on this son screwdriver. How bonkers is that? This is supposed to be a new son screwdriver, and it's not even a wood setting. I'm gonna have to get a refund for this screwdriver. Anyway guys, I hope you guys enjoy my review on Knock Knock, as I've just watched it now and I've just finished the review. So let's begin my review on Knock Knock, and as they said in the episode, knock on wood, if you know what I mean. Anyway, just before we start, I just really want to fix this so badly because this blimmin' wall is doing my head in. Just wait one moment. Gosh, now this screwdriver's faulty. I definitely need a refund so badly. Let's begin. Hey guys, what's up? I'm back with another video, and in today's video we're going to be doing the review for Knock Knock. Now, I was really hoping for a real horror story, and what did I get? A fantastic horror story. I really loved this episode. I thought the definition of horror in this episode was well deceived. I saw a lot of deaths, and I really saw a lot of tension span building up. I felt that the creaking and also the thundering and lightning of the haunted house was really, really powerful. I thought it really added to the atmosphere of the haunted house, and I really loved how all of the creaking was keeping me intact with the episode. It was making me so intrigued of what's that creaking, what's behind that door, and it was just really, really keeping me intact with the episode. And I felt that Peter Capaldi did a fantastic job in this episode, as well as with Bill as well. But many praises to the brilliant David Suchet's fantastic performance in this episode. He was amazing. I cannot agree more how awesome his performance was, from being a very charming and very kind landlord to be a quite dark, very sinister and very mysterious landlord. And then in the end, he was very emotional when he suddenly realised, when the doctor realised that he was the son of the wooden lady or the figure called Elijah, I think. And it was just to his extent that he was very emotional and he cried. And I felt that for him, it was a very unique scene for him, because I've never seen David Suchet in any of the acting he's done. I've seen a couple of scenes from many of his shows, but I've never really seen him cry on screen in front of, you know, an entire audience, to see how brilliant of an actor David Suchet is. And to get that reaction, his performance was absolutely amazing. I have to say 10 out performances from David Suchet, because he was really dark, he was very creepy, he didn't like anybody lurking, and no matter if anybody was lurking in the corridors, he would always be there. No matter if there was the entire house was always going to be creaking around. And in the scene where all of the, you know, students came into the room, he was just there standing. How did he not make a sound when he entered the room without making a creaking noise? How is that possible? I find that very, very intimidating and very dark and mysterious as well. He's just absolutely fantastic. And so we might as well start from the beginning of the episode. Now, from the beginning, I didn't really think that Bill needed to move in with a lot of students into a big, massive house. I mean, it didn't even make sense. And even Bill wasn't even introduced to everybody. I mean, she was, but she didn't really know them before. And she was like completely introduced to all of them. And she had no idea if she was an actual student. Obviously, she was a dinner lady serving chips, but she was never an actual student. So why would she make friends with a lot of students? I mean, she doesn't really have a lot of friends. And why was to the point that they needed to find a house for them, for all of them to live in? And I just felt it was really, really strange. And I think even the estate agent was so stupid as well. Seeing if 6 people can live in a house this small, you have to be absolutely bonkers. And I mean, really, in a small house where 6 people are gonna live in, I mean, one tour was just living 6'4" or something like that. I mean, even so, I'm 6'3", and I can get that reaction where I need a bigger house for me to live in, and I need more space, to be honest. But I cannot deal with so low roofs or so low ceilings at all. I cannot deal with that at all. I suffer a lot of consequences while being tall in this sense. So unfortunately, I would literally suffer. But I felt the estate agent just didn't really help at all. And then David Suchet just came into the entire situation. Like, are you looking for a place to stay? And then he introduced the entire haunted house in front of them and saying, oh, you can't go into the tower, it's off limits. And that really felt so creepy in my opinion, telling that the tower's off limits, no one can go in there, there's no entrance to the tower at all. And then in the middle of the episode, there was a little book that activated the door and the bookcase to swing open, and there was the entrance to the tower. Obviously, it's very much of a simple Scooby-Doo kind of thing there, opening a book and then suddenly the wall just completely swaps around, really. That's a classic Scooby-Doo thing. And even so, there was one person, I'm not even too sure how to pronounce her name, but she actually mentioned that the house was almost like a Scooby-Doo freakish kind of house. I actually like that reference. And speaking of references, I didn't really get a reference to Harry Sullivan, the classic Who companion that I mentioned in my preview. I didn't really get a mention from him in this episode. I mean, Harry was tagging along the Doctor in this episode, which to Harry was actually the grandson of Harry Sullivan. And I didn't really get a mention from Harry Sullivan being a classic Who companion, and the Doctor didn't even mention that up at all. And so that felt really strange, and I was just hoping that they would put that reference in, but unfortunately they didn't really have that reference in at all. So that was a really bit disappointing that they didn't add that in. But never mind, I think Bill wasn't really interested to move in with a lot of these students at all, because most of the students, they were really great friends with each other, and then Bill was just like a newcomer. And he was like, why did Bill even have to move in with these people? It just didn't make sense. I mean, she's got her own, you know, flat, but obviously her mum probably be a bit mental and uninspiring maybe. But why would she have to move in with a lot of strangers and just live in together in a haunted house? It just didn't make sense to her, and just didn't make sense to me in this sense. And then we had the first scream of just before the titles rolled on screen. There was this person just playing music in the background, and then heard all the thundering and lightning, and then suddenly heard loads of creaking noises in the hallway. And then when he came back to the room, there was so many screams and yells. I felt really intimidated that something was in the room with it. I thought it was going to be more that tree type of creature strangling the person, and suddenly that person would be killed off. So there was an already death scene, but we didn't actually see the person die. But then later on in the episodes, we saw actually 2 people actually being killed, and then I'm not sure about the other 2. I think one person was completely killed while Bill and that other person, that other girl, was knocking on the door, and he actually died while he was trying to be faking to die, and then he actually got killed off in that kind of scene. And I thought, why can't it just show us the scene? I wanted to see a bit more horror, to make this episode a true defining episode of what horror is really all about. I just really loved the scenes where Harry and also that other girl died right in front of us. The lice and the wood lice just climbing up onto their, you know, body, and basically just eating away at every little piece of, you know, flesh, and they completely disintegrate into the ground. I felt that was a real horror kind of scene to add in this episode. I thought their death scenes were really powerful, and also the characters. I would have to say the supporting characters or the students, I would say they're quite likeable. I would say Harry's my favourite because he looks so familiar to one person. He looks like, when I did my video on my merchandise showcase, I mentioned about Adam Time Lord Fishwick. He looks so similar to that person called Harry with the Doctor in this episode. He looks so much, almost identical twins to each other. They look so identical. And as I mentioned to you, Adam Time Lord Fishwick, just to mention that out in this video, but you just look so similar to that person in this episode. Just, wow, I was like looking at you like, is that Adam Time Lord Fishwick in that episode? I didn't know he was on Doctor Who. Like, seriously, come on. And just, that was absolutely an amazing thing to have. And I thought him and the Doctor worked really, really well together. And then I was a bit, you know, surprised and quite shocked myself that Harry was actually killed on screen. And it was just to the reaction that I got that was like so intense. Like, oh my gosh, that was terrifying. I mean, I really felt that this episode was so of an intense, terrifying episode. I just really loved the death on screen. They were just so amazing. And just as the story was going so well towards the end, Mike Bartlett, the writer of this episode, had to bring back all of the people who died in this episode. Why? It didn't make sense. Why did these people need to come back from the dead since they were already been eaten by the woodlice creatures, and they were obviously being fed to the woman creature, Elijah, I think, or the wooden woman, I would think. And I just didn't really think that why would Mike Bartlett need to bring back all of the characters in this episode? I would have liked if Mike Bartlett could have just left all of the people who died in this episode remain dead. Because I do not want another repeating act of what Stephen Moffat did in The Hellbent, reviving somebody from the dead just to basically live in the next episode. I didn't really want that to happen. And just to the end of the episode, where this episode could have been so fantastic and so brilliant if just that Mike Bartlett could have just left all of the people dead in this episode and just don't bring them back. And I just felt that when Mike Bartlett brought all of them back, the ending was very rushed, like they were racing out of the house just to get away before the house could collapse. And I just didn't really think that that would have been the best ending. I would have liked it if Bill and the Doctor escaped and then the entire house just collapsed on its own without anybody around them. So I would have think that would have been a better ending to the episode. But with just all of them being there, escaped from this amazing haunted house, I felt it was a real disappointment to have that ending. But oh well. The Doctor saying, well, better luck next time. I think the Doctor was really fantastic, and to the point where Bill was asking like, oh, Time Lords, what's that? It's like, oh, are you like called a Time Lord just for that? That sounds like so hilarious. And I really liked how Bill was getting to know the Doctor and getting to know his species, and how the Doctor said regenerated, then Bill mentioned regenerated? And then there was like a little few seconds of pausing where the Doctor was like thinking about regeneration. It kind of haunted him in some way that he didn't really want to think about regeneration, because he obviously knew that he was going to come to his end eventually, but he didn't really want to think about that word regenerated at all. So it actually really haunted him in this episode. So I really liked that as a real good high. And when just after the rolling titles came out, so I saw knock knock, Bill was actually moving some stuff, and funny enough, I actually saw something that I actually had, where Bill was actually unloading, basically loading all of her stuff into the TARDIS. In the box, there was a teddy bear. And I honestly knew, and basically Capaldi was picking up the teddy bear, and funny enough, it was unbelievably a coincidence that I had the exact same teddy bear that the Doctor was just holding up in his hands. And funny enough, I have it right here. To be honest with you, I want to show you this. This is the exact same teddy that Peter Capaldi held up in this episode. And I was like so amazed of how the hell did he have the same teddy bear as me. Such of a coincidence. And just to be honest, I was so amazed of how awesome of a coincidence that they had this teddy bear in this episode. And I was just like so amazed like that they actually have something that I have, and it was just so amazing, just of a weird coincidence that they have the same teddy bear that I have right here. It's just such of a coincidence. Oh, I'm in Doctor Who. I can't believe it just did that. It's me imitating a teddy bear voice. What am I, 5? Possibly, yes. To be honest with you, I'm childish like the Doctor. You can't be having fun if you can't be childish sometimes, just like Tom Baker. Anyway, let's move on. Anyway, I thought that David Suchet was a real highlight of this episode, because his acting was just so powerful in this episode. And I really liked how the Doctor was underestimating David Suchet as a character. David Suchet wasn't actually underestimating the Doctor at all. He was actually admiring him for his silence of confirmation that the Doctor is not just an ordinary human being. He's actually another person from another planet or another dimension. And the landlord actually noticed that he was very much of a very mysterious character, the Doctor. The Doctor was just so fantastic, trying to identify, was the landlord actually responsible for this actual wooden creature or the wooden mother of like his, since the Doctor actually picked out what was wrong with the actual creature or the tree creature, or like sometimes like the dryads and the woodlice creatures were quite very mysterious and quite intimidating. And I didn't really think that they would be the actual threat, but I saw when they started to kill people, then I realised that they were really, really deadly. And I just saw from David Suchet's character, the landlord, as he was a very much sinister, creepy kind of character. Like, he needed to destroy all of the people within the house. Because every 20 years, as this is the plot line initially, every 20 years they try to bring people to the house, and then one by one everybody gets killed off or get eaten by these woodlice creatures, and they automatically get fed to the tree creature or the tree woman, could I say. I'm getting mixed up with what I should call, you know, the tree woman or anything like that. I think I'll just call it Elijah because that's her actual name. Seriously, I'm getting a bit mixed up at the moment here. Anyway, I think Elijah was actually really, really good. I actually liked all of the cosmetics that went into her costume. I mean, her actual look, looking so wooden, and I think she did an absolutely wooden performance. Get it? Wooden. So I think we'll leave all the puns for this review, but anyway, I thought her cosmetics and the way she looked was just so amazing. It made her look like a real tree has just overtaken her and possessed her in some way. She looked absolutely phenomenal. I thought her, you know, costume was just looked so amazing. Now, this is what many people thought about, you know, David Suchet as the landlord. Many people would have liked to have the landlord to be a Time Lord facing up against the Doctor as an enemy or foe with a foe. And I didn't really want the landlord to be a Time Lord, and I'm glad he wasn't. Because I actually felt that he was just a very, your run-of-the-mill landlord who seemed quite charming, creepy, but very emotional as well. Especially, I love the creepy elements from David Suchet. I think he was absolutely brilliant. Just the way he felt so sinister, so dark, and very creepy, and very mysterious when he was talking to Bill and also the other student with her. And I thought just the tuning fork he always carries around with him was just so amazing. And I felt the true defiant sound from the tuning fork that he had really built up to the atmosphere within this episode to create it sort of a very creaking, high-pitched kind of episode. I didn't even think that David Suchet really needed to be a Time Lord in this episode. I mean, it just didn't really make sense that would he have been a mysterious Time Lord in this episode. I mean, I don't really think it would have mattered if he was a Time Lord or not, because I just really felt that he was your run-of-the-mill, kind of creepy, charming, but very much of emotional kind of landlord. And I really loved him in this episode. Very sinister, dark, charming. And then at the end, when the Doctor automatically realised that the landlord was actually the son of Elijah, which was actually his mother. And it was to the point where David Suchet's character, the landlord, became so emotional, but yet very angry as well, because he actually wanted all of the people to be killed off in this episode, so therefore that his mother could stay alive. And I really felt that that was really, really powerful of his performance. And I thought Elijah was really, really powerful in this as well, because she was actually controlling these woodlice creatures, and she could actually force not to kill the Doctor or Bill, or to kill them all. And so she felt very much in possession of power in this episode. She didn't really felt that the landlord was actually being of a very brute to her. The landlord was being almost like the son being quite nice to her mother. And would Elijah probably say, like, it's time to end this, son, and don't go into any more trouble. So I think maybe Elijah's probably telling off the landlord for stop being so mean, maybe. I don't know, but I felt that the plot was really, really strong, and I thought that every 20 years there would be a new set of people living in the house, and then the woodlice creatures would feed upon those humans, and then they'll be fed to Elijah for this sense, to keep her alive. And I actually really liked how that was included included by Harry, finding all of this information every 20 years. So I'm not probably going to move into a house when it's 2037, to be honest. No way, I'm not going to move into a scary haunted house and being attacked by woodlice, I can tell you that for sure, guys. And so I thought the woodlice creatures, where the Doctor was trying to think about who these woodlice creatures are. Are they dryads, tree spirits? And when in the end he thought about tree spirits and dryads, and he actually thought that they were actually alien. And in this sense, in my sense, I actually thought they were alien because they looked very mysterious. They didn't have any earth properties. They came out of the wall, which meant they had very much of a wooden kind of property. And I felt that they would be of a very intimidating threat lurking inside the wall, because there automatically are the walls initially. They're everywhere. They're the entire house. I mean, obviously, they've just been eating away at every single human being that's just walked into this haunted house. And they've just been creating all of the creaking, the shattering of the shutters, and the thundering and lightning in the background. Just really intense, that kind of atmosphere, the haunted atmosphere that I really wanted. I felt that the first half was so powerful. And I did feel a little bit of awkwardness through the Doctor and Bill's relationship. Like, Bill didn't really want the Doctor to be involved with all of this. She actually wanted the Doctor just to go and just to leave her alone, to experience and just meet all of these new people. I didn't even think that Bill even knew all of the people before she went into the haunted house. I think she was very much confused about who all of these people were. Like, do I need to move into these people? And just, it was really, really confusing for her. Like, why did I have to move in with these people? I don't really know them at all. And I just didn't really think there was no point for her to move in. So I actually felt that it was actually a bit of a negative, in my opinion, to let Bill go into this house with all these people, and then suddenly she has a traumatic experience, seeing all these people die, and, you know, mysteriously and so suddenly, and then she sees another death on screen that makes her so scared and so traumatic. But why did Bill even need to care? She hardly knew any of the people, and I just didn't really felt that the Doctor really had a great connection with Bill in this episode. We obviously saw a little bit more of a conflict, and we saw that Bill wanted to get the Doctor out of her life, because this is, I mean, she said this in the episode, like, this is to the point where I need you to leave me out of my life, because this is the point where you're not in it. And then the Doctor's like, oh yes, I do understand. And it's to the point where the Doctor truly understands, like, what Bill's talking about. And it always feels very awkward for Bill to experience the Doctor being around her when she has all of her new friends with her. And I just really liked how the Doctor was very much intact with the episode. He was very, very ongoing. He didn't really want to leave the house at all. He was really interested, very interesting, a lot of wood. And he was really fascinated with all the creaking and all the scratching. He was really, really interested in the haunted house. And surprisingly enough, we didn't see Bill really enjoying herself in the episode. We were really much experiencing her being scared in this episode. And it was to the point where I never saw any of this in the series until now, where we actually saw some fright and a few scares from Bill, and it was to the point where she was so terrified in this episode. So yeah, I thought Bill in this was just really, really good. I really liked how she had so many scares in this episode, because she completely freaked out a few times where some of the shutters closed, and there was just so many awkwardness within this episode, where one guy trying to get on with Bill, but then suddenly he realised that Bill's gay, and it was just a really, really awkward. And when the Doctor came into the room and wanted to, you know, hang out with Bill and all of her, you know, students and all of her friends, it felt really awkward for Bill to be with the Doctor and with her friends at the same time. It's very awkward, like, if you have your mum and dad with your friends, it's always very awkward, like, you always want them to be out of the room and let them, you know, for you to socialise with your friends, but you don't want your parents to be cool with your friends, and you want them to be out of the way with. So that's what I kind of think that Bill wanted to happen in this episode, that Bill saw the Doctor as her grandfather, and she wanted her grandfather to be out of this episode, and she wanted him to go and leave her with her friends. And so I sort of see what Bill was up to, and then I saw the Doctor was very much interested with the haunted house. And obviously, I said in my preview that Bill automatically knows what's happening in the episode before the Doctor does. It's the opposite way around. I actually think the Doctor actually noticed everything before Bill could really process everything first. And it's to her point that she doesn't really think that all of this is a haunted house. She thinks it's a very old house with a very dodgy landlord. And the doctor's like, no, it's way more creepy than that. It's very much a creepy haunted house with a very three-dimensional landlord. But when I mean by three-dimensional, I mean that the landlord, David Suchet's character, is actually a three-dimensional character who seems very kind and very charming towards the students for signing the contract. Very much of a smiley kind of person. And then we saw another dimension through the sinisterness and the darkness and mysteriousness through the landlord. And then in the end we saw his emotional grief and his, upsettingness, and I felt that David Suchet as the landlord was so fantastic, such a great three-dimensional character, and I thought he was just so brilliant in this episode. I think of a 10 out of 10 performance from David Suchet as the landlord. He was brilliant in this episode. Absolutely loved him, and I really loved the direction in this. I think all of the shots just really added to the atmosphere, and the tension in the episode really had so much great tension. I really loved all the scratching, the creaking, and then you've got the thundering and lightning in outside. It just really added up to all of the tension and the haunted atmosphere in the episode. I felt the episode was so haunting, and I felt this episode was really fantastic. And so my overall rating for this episode will have to be a 9.5 out of 10, because I don't really see this episode as a brilliant, fantastic episode. There were a few things that I didn't really think needed to be there. Why did Bill need to move into the house with all of these friends of hers, or should I say so-called friends? I mean, Bill didn't really know all of them, and it just felt really strange. Why did Bill need to move into a house when she's already got a house of her own? Well, perhaps maybe her mother's perhaps a bit unexpired, maybe, that she's moving in with all these other friends, and perhaps it's just a weird conspiracy maybe. But also, I didn't really like the awkwardness in the episode with the students and with Bill. It just felt of a very awkward kind of silence when Bill was talking to one of the students, and it kind of dragged on for me a little bit. And also, I just didn't really like the ending initially, because I didn't really want all of the characters to come back from the dead. Once you've just been killed off in an episode, you can't come back unless Stephen Moffat has the glorious power to bring you back to life, just like what he did in Hellbent. I didn't really want all these people to come back in the episode. I want them just to be dead and just to die and collapse with the house itself. That would have been a brilliant ending in my opinion, but why did they have to come back? It just didn't really make any sense. I mean, Bill hardly even knew all of her friends, or so-called friends. It just didn't really make sense in my opinion. So that's just the disappointment that I didn't like about this episode. But the ending could be a bit better. I like the plotline. The plotline was really strong in the first half. I really loved it. And then many people would say that the ending is a bit rushed. However, I thought it was a real emotional kind of ending to the plot, and I felt knowing that the doctor identifies that the Elijah is not the landlord's daughter, it's actually the landlord's mother, and the landlord actually experiencing that he's been lying all this time to be like her father, and then he automatically confesses that forgive me, and it's just to his reactions that I saw tears coming down his eyes, and he was just an emotional character, the landlord. But in this episode, we see some heart from the landlord, and the crying just shows that he is an emotional, real person, that he's quite charming, he's very sinister, and he does also have a heart too, which doesn't really make him a Time Lord with two hearts. He has a heart, which shows he has emotional differences to the Doctor, and I think that's really powerful. And I just think that people just need to stop worrying about the landlord being a Time Lord. He's not a Time Lord. What makes him a Time Lord being different? I mean, the tuning fork, I really love the tuning fork. I'm going to get one myself. I'm just going to play it around all the house and see if I can just creep the hell out of people with I get my yourself a tuning fork. But just tuning fork just really sensed and really built up that haunted intention, and also built up the atmosphere in the episode. Some of the scenes where one person was actually eaten away by the wall or the woodlights in the house, I thought that was really creepy, and the way that one person was actually stuck into the wall and looked like that he was almost killed by the wall was so terrifying. I just really loved the death scenes. I really loved all of the horror in this episode. The moments where the doors kind of shattered and closed, and I just really loved all of the shutters closing, people disappearing, people screaming and yelling. It's a very much of a horror kind of story, but you don't really see the deaths until you see the last 2 deaths, where you really see all of the horror in this episode, which I think they could have done a bit more on, showing more of the deaths, but I think that would have made the episode a bit too much hard on with the horror in this episode. But I really loved this episode. I thought this episode was a truly brilliant episode. But not only that, the ending to the episode was also intriguing as well. Very interesting as well from Nardol's point of view. I mean, is Nardol actually there on work experience? So is he like some kind of a colleague to the Doctor? Is he actually doing work for the Doctor while he's going off-world? So is actually Nardol getting paid to do this job, looking after the vault? I'm surely hope he does, because he wouldn't be too happy if he's not getting the amount he wanted. And so yeah. And also the Doctor said in the episode where he was surrounded by all of the when he was surrounded by Bill's friends, he loves Chinese, and then he brought back a takeaway, and I was hoping for him to say Chinese, and then he said Mexican. Why? And to be honest with you, I'm not even too sure what kind of food does the Doctor like. Does it like Chinese? Does it like Mexican? And then why the hell did he put a piano in the vaults? Just to keep the person restless in the vaults? I'm pretty sure that it could be the Master. It definitely is surely to be the Master. And then I read something that one person told me that in episode 6, they will reveal who is inside the vaults. This early on in the series, they will reveal who is inside the vaults. That's really intense, and I'm seriously looking forward to episode 6, which I think the episode is called Extremist, but we won't worry about that because we're worrying about next week's episode, Oxygen, which seems like a very unusual title to call a Doctor Who episode, Oxygen. Maybe it's like you must keep all of your oxygen because you only have a certain amount of breaths until you die. And that seems like a really good episode, and funny enough, Nardol's going to be in this episode. Thank you. He's not just there in the sidelines anymore. He's actually going to be fully head-on in the episode, which I definitely want to give Nardol a second chance in this series for Doctor Who. And I'm just really hoping that maybe in Oxygen, will he provide some great assistance? Will he have a final position? Will Doctor Who explain what Nardol's purpose in Doctor Who? Will we really experience that in this series? So I'm just really hoping for Nardol's performance in Oxygen, so I'm just really looking forward to that. And I just really cannot wait to see who is inside the vault. I'm definitely sure it's definitely the Master, John Simm's Master, or it could be a new character who we've never really seen before, or it could be a character who we've never really had much memory to, but is really good at playing the piano. And it reminds me that the Doctor mentioned something about dinner, and I remembered a scene where the Master said dinner time in the end of time. That was really much the point where, dinner? And like the Master was like, you know, I'm so hungry in the end of time. So maybe it could be the Master. We're not too sure. We're going to have to find out in episode 6. But I cannot wait for episode 5 of Oxygen. I bet it's going to be brilliant as well. And with this episode, I certainly say that I have very much enjoyed this episode as a very much horror, haunting kind of episode. It was really fantastic. A few disappointments here and there, but oh well, a brilliant episode. A 9.5 rating out of 10 is a brilliant rating. It's the same with Thin Ice. I think Thin Ice and Knock Knock have been 2 of my favourite episodes so far in Series 10, and I cannot wait for more. I just really loved this episode. I thought this episode was just so brilliant. The Doctor and Bill's performances were really great. I think David Suchet's character, the landlord, was so fantastic in this episode. Elijah, I really loved all of her cosmetics and the way she was portrayed in this episode as a daughter, but then suddenly turned into a mother when the Doctor pointed out, like, you're his mother. And like, what? Like, why? Like, it's just really to the point where I suddenly know this now, because the landlord cannot be old enough enough to be her father, so it must be her son instead. So that was really, really amazing. Just the doctor to point out, like, you're his son, you're his father. And that's really, really what the doctor does. He points out stuff because it helps him some way to think. And so I think that was a really good thing for the doctor to do. I think the doctor and Bill were really fantastic. I liked all the supporting characters. I thought some of the characters were really good. And unfortunately, I didn't get a reference from Harry Sullivan in this episode, but I think in the Doctor Who magazine it only mentioned that. And anyway guys, this concludes my review on Knock Knock. So thank you guys for watching for this review. I hope you have enjoyed it. Make sure you leave a like on this video, but also comment down below on what your thoughts on Knock Knock, and tell me, what did you think of it? Was it a really good horror story? Was it a very interesting story? And make sure you do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. The Doctor's been haunted by wood. Freaking wood again. Fortunately, his sonic screwdriver can't do anything about wood, unfortunately. I think he has a new setting for defeating wood on the sonic screwdriver. I just hope so. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time for my preview on Oxygen. See you guys then.